Hi, it's Joy and today I'm going to be watching Rings of Power, Season 1, Episode 1, Shadows of the Past. I am really excited to watch this show. I will admit upfront that I am not a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I actually watched the movies for the first time last week in order to watch this show, after having previously watched the first film when I was at uni and not enjoying it that much. It has all the makings of a story that I would love, and it's evidently like one of the most popular franchises in the world, so I'm not saying it's bad, but objectively there was just something in it that didn't grab me. On a rewatch, when I gave them all another chance, I did enjoy the movies a lot more than I had the first time. I also really enjoyed the Hobbit films. So I am just excited to jump into this world and to see what this show is all about and what it has to offer. And I don't know, maybe the fact that I'm not a huge fan of the original movies, I don't dislike them, but I'm not like a mega fan, might mean that I enjoy this show more. I don't know, because I feel like a lot, I remember, I didn't look for spoilers or anything, but I remember seeing a lot of people didn't like this show, but I also think some people did like this show. So yeah, this show also did come second in my most recent Patreon poll for a new show to watch, which is why I am watching it. So I am really excited to watch it. I think honestly my main reason that I didn't particularly enjoy the Lord of the Rings movies was I felt like I could really tell that they were 20 years old, which makes me feel horrendously old. But you know, they were dated already, which is weird. Like there were so many moments and things that I was like, oh, they could do that slightly differently now and it would just be that bit better. So the fact that this show is being made now makes me excited. Also, I definitely did see people criticizing it for being too woke and like diversifying, and I'm hoping that's true. Whenever something is criticized for being too woke and too diverse, I'm like, sign me up. A reminder that you can find the unedited version of this reaction on my Patreon 2 weeks in advance, the edited version 1 week in advance, and let's go.
Even you couldn't possibly believe their old scrap will float.
It's not going to float. It's going to sail.
You go, girl.
Stop! Stop!
Little brats. Horrible little children.
Float.
Well, then you're blind, because it clearly was floating.
Give up me!
Lose your footing again, Galadriel.
The ship feels the darkness as well, striving moment by moment to master her. The
He's a
tools
good
are
big
unknown.
brother.
How am I to know which lights to follow?
Wise baby. He's gonna grow into a very wise woman.
For we thought our joys would be unending.
Even the longest lived creatures die eventually, even if it's through natural causes or murder. Something else that obviously, because I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings buff, if there are elements and plot devices or backstories and lore and things that are referenced that I miss, that are not going to be explained later on in the show, do tell me, because I love learning about these worlds. Even immortals can die in battles.
We learned many words for death.
Yep. She's very dedicated. Also not much of a team player, I'm guessing.
Perhaps we would be wise to camp here, and tomorrow begin the journey home.
We are losing the light.
I mean, camping here and then continuing on tomorrow wouldn't be the worst idea, would it?
Keep moving, Galadriel! Stop!
You're losing your men! Their lives matter too. So did she not realise someone had fallen? That looks like something. Just a little bit like something. The symbol.
Sauron was here. Tell the others to rest while they can. At sunrise we move on. Let's take the search farther north.
Don't know when he was here.
This mark.
We exceeded our orders months ago. Surely we must first return home to take counsel with the High King.
You want to come all the way back here?
There is not a soul amongst our...
Wandering off alone is foolish. Oh, was that something crawling around above him? I don't like it. Oh, it's bigger than I thought it was. Is it not following? Oh Christ. That was cool. Like, she's not just the leader because she's royalty. She's also very skilled.
The order is given. We march at first light.
Mutiny. As much as you want revenge and justice, you can't force other people to do it too. Like, I understand that she wants... I almost agree with her to a point that Sauron is such a big threat that you have to scour every inch of the world to check you got him. But if your company have lost faith, they're lost the will to go on, they're just going to put themselves in more danger by carrying on. It kind of is a balancing act that needs to be done.
Clear and clear.
Why do they have to hide? Your people are hiding for a reason. Don't do something stupid.
I found something.
Oh no, what have they found?
There's something in the mud.
Child,
What is this?
back away from the mud, please.
A dog. Just a dog. You know how dogs love berries.
Maybe we should go home. Oh yeah. Foolish children. There is a reason adults tell you not to do things. Nothing to see here.
Harold Elrond.
He's gonna go up in the world one day.
I demand to speak with the king directly.
You have made
Everyone
that
else
plain,
seems pretty determined to move on.
so I will be equally plain.
Are you going to arrange an audience or not?
She is fixated on her goal.
Ceremony.
I get why she's as fixated as she is, but we also get where they want to move on.
Haven't you ever wondered? What else is out there?
A hobbit with a desire for travel.
Flows or where the sparrows learn.
Some feared a new evil might arise from his shadow. So for centuries now, these soldiers
The danger
have
is
swept
still out
crag
there.
and crevice,
I get why you don't think it
washing away
is.
the last they return to us in triumph, for they have proven beyond any doubt
That is the opposite of what she thinks is going to happen. Is she going to interrupt the ceremony or go with it?
over.
I don't fully understand the whole crossing the seas to the like, if you can explain that to me, because I didn't quite get it in the movie either. Like, if they had this place they could go to, like, is it a literal place? At one point I thought they were like going to the afterlife, but then I think like the literal place across the sea, and it's the place we saw at the beginning. If it's there, why don't they all go?
But instead I am to leave them.
Not yet.
This is
Eventually,
gift.
yes.
The evil is gone.
Then why is it not gone from in here?
Homer.
After all you have endured.
I mean, she's not wrong. The evil isn't gone, but also you carry trauma with you and the pain and the agony, and especially when you haven't seen that the person's dead. Even if he had died and we just didn't have his body, you would never believe it unless you saw it.
If you are wrong,
I'm not
if
wrong.
you are wrong, will you lead more elves to die in far-off lands?
She did say she'd go by
Convince
herself if
yourself
needed.
you've done enough. How many more statues? Only in the blessed realm can that which is broken in you be healed. Go
Maybe.
there. Go, and I promise you.
But I also think she
But
needs
a
to see
whisper
this
of a
through.
rumor of the threat you perceive proves true. I will not rest until it is put right.
It could be too
You
late
have
by that
fought
point.
Long enough, Galadriel.
How long is this before, like, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings? I forget. I will look some of that up afterwards, but I don't want to spoil myself.
Care for a drink, soldier? Well, my well is yours, as ever.
So what is going on
Poisoning?
here?
What poisoning?
You were
The one
discussing
just
it?
discussing.
No.
And what day was he here?
Oh, let it go, knife is. It's a bloody patch of grass. When are you people gonna let the past go?
Interesting.
Past is with us all, whether we like it or not.
What is the scenario here?
To your pointy boots.
Easy, lad. Quench the fire.
We-
Anything else, then?
Didn't punish a stupid kid for speaking out. What is going on here? What's the scenario? So did humans wrong elves at some point and now elves like rule over them? I'm just intrigued with this particular scenario. And with all scenarios.
All the fire outposts are being disbanded.
We're leaving.
So that's what's happening. And if the elves are supposedly here to protect humans, That's one thing. If they're here kind of as like overlords, then definitely leave.
But the men who live here have not. The blood of those who stood with Morgoth still darkens their veins.
Okay, so that's why they were here. Makes sense.
For 79 years you've kept watch over the men and women of Tirharad, not because of what their ancestors once did, but because of who they still are.
If you treat them like that, they're never going to have a chance to grow or to reflect, and they're going to think, well, we're being oppressed, maybe my ancestors were right. There'll be good people and bad people in the town. He has long hair. What do his ears look like?
Careful.
I have said it already. 100 times over, in every way but words.
Maybe the words all count.
Where's she been grazing?
She wandered east a few days ago.
East, like where the poisoned field was?
Maybe that's why your father run off like he done.
My father didn't run off.
Then what happened to him? You don't even know, do you?
Thought you were here as friends and now you're being a little bitch. Oof. It's not a good thing, child. Put it down, child. She's gonna refuse to get off.
Beyond my sight.
Or swim home.
Galadriel was so certain her search should continue.
We foresaw that if it had, she might have...
You believe it does exist?
Set your mind at peace about it.
Almost like they're watching for something.
Oh, great.
Watching for what?
The skies are strange.
Yes, they are.
I know them. There are good people there.
But it was a long time ago. Do you know the people that were alive then? There's no time for romance. Fuck.
Warden.
So did someone who hated the people that were allied with Morgoth do that? Or... She doesn't want to go. What is the logistics of this? Like, are they just like going to heaven? Or just crossing the ocean?
Give me your hand.
She's not going to. Or...
But sometimes the lights shine just as brightly reflected in the water as they do in the sky.
Sometimes we cannot know until we have touched the darkness.
She does not want to go. So all of the attendants get to go as well. That's cool. You don't get to just decide it's a peaceful time. It's a person? Is it Sauron? Or someone totally separate? Okay, so I enjoyed that episode. I definitely feel like it wasn't like the best thing I've ever seen. I think it definitely was setting the scene for something I'm very much looking forward to, and because this is a show with such sort of sweeping stakes, with a decent array of characters, with people from different walks of life, and it's from a portion of history that those of us at least who have only seen the movies are not familiar with, they had a lot of ground to cover, and I imagine they'll still be doing that a little bit in the next episode. But it was very... I liked the way they did the beginning with kind of showing the elves before they crossed to Middle Earth, and kind of the battle with Sauron, and kind of really hitting home how big the stakes were, that they didn't even have a concept really of death or of dying, or that such terrible things could happen until this moment. And you could definitely see how someone who was so young when it all happened would grow with that in her heart, and the fear of losing more people and of avenging her brother and completing his quest. How could she ever rest before she truly was able to know for certain that the realm was safe from the threat that had taken him? Can also understand the elven king wanting to move on and wanting to let people enjoy this peace that they've basically had for centuries, by what they said. You know, instead of living constantly and enjoying the peace while being like, oh my god, is the bad guy going to come back? But knowing that he knows the guy is out there somewhere, it does seem foolish to declare the time of peace. It definitely reminds me of the freaking fact that people like Joe Biden are being like, the pandemic is over, as people still die of COVID. You're like, this is Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, it's fine. You know, I could definitely understand declaring an age of peace, but just have people out there searching for any remnants of Sauron, I can't remember the name, Morgoth's army or whatever. Don't say, yeah, we think Sauron's out there and they're going to go find him, but say like, oh, we've got some people out there that are going to go and they're going to track down if there are any stragglers or any artifacts he left behind. You know, you can spin it in a way that isn't entirely a lie, because they would be doing that, while also acknowledging he's out there somewhere and you're not just going to leave him time to grow. Because yes, there's a good chance he could be out there somewhere dying slowly, miserable and alone, but you can't just wait for him to strike. Now, I don't entirely know what the thing at the end was, if that was just like who that was, if that was Sauron being like, I'm done hiding, I'm going to go be a comet for a while. I'm sure I will understand, but right now I just felt like I had a lot of information and I wasn't able to place where all of it fits 100%. I thought it was very interesting to see Galadriel at this point. I mean, she wasn't a character I fully understood in the Lord of the Rings movies. I mean, I did not understand her, but I feel like she was almost one of the smaller parts of the movie than I expected her to be. So seeing her backstory, her brother, and then her as a young-ish elf with her quest, you know, I understood why she was determined to stay on that mission despite the orders to keep going, because they were so close to potentially something. But you know, I could imagine a few days before they've been like, maybe we should go home, and she said, oh, if we can just reach that outpost, then we'll be done. And then they reach the outpost and she's like, oh no, there's a mark, we need to keep going. And you know, they'd have got to the next spot and she'd have said, oh, we still got to keep going. But I do also want her that she found evidence of something. There was something here. I do think it's worth revisiting, them investigating further, investigating the area, but I also don't think going home was the worst idea when they did. Initially, if they had just camped through the night on when they reached the top of the summit and then continued instead of camping through the night and then going home, that might have been a good idea as well. But it definitely showed you her singular focus, that she was kind of almost forgetting to care for the people that she was leading. And as a leader, you have to put their comfort first. Now, of course, when she was reminded, someone's falling behind, we're struggling, she gave them her cloak. She was a good leader. She wasn't totally, you know, a terrible person or anything like that. But you can see how lost she almost is to this quest, and why people that care about her might want her to find peace. But the idea that they're trying to just ship her off so that no one else has to worry, even though they know the threat is out there, is maddening to me. I love seeing characters that you know from the future now when they were younger. It's very interesting as well. And then we're seeing the humans and the way that human villages that sided with the bad guys are still being punished. Now, saying, oh, the blood of the people that sided with him is still in them. Okay, sure, but like, that doesn't mean they themselves are better. Now, if they are the specific people that sided with him, that is one thing. If they're just their descendants, I'm sure a lot of people have descendants that did things they didn't agree with. It doesn't mean they are like that. If you continue to treat them like they are like that, if you treat them like they are lesser, like they don't matter, like the sins of their ancestors are always going to be with them, then they may continue to act that way. So that was a very interesting concept. And the idea that for still after all this time for humans and elves to have any kind of mingling is so, I mean, I know I feel like in the movies the different races were very separate, and kind of the movies themselves were some of the only times they really intermingled, but that was very interesting as well, to kind of what a big deal it was that a human and elf might be fraternizing. Now the barn had the hill or the dagger or whatever, that was a Sauron dagger, so there's stuff going on there. Definitely feel like this episode began to scratch the surface of the story we're going to be exploring, and I feel like I'm always annoyed because I want more information, and because they were telling me about like 5 different stories, there wasn't time for me to get enough information on any one thing. I did really enjoy what I watched, but I want more, and I don't entirely know the direction it's going. And the thing that the guy that Elrond is going to work with, is he making the rings? Because they didn't mention the rings yet, so I do think this is when the rings are going to get made. I'm just very intrigued with where it's going to go next. I did enjoy this episode. I feel like a part of me wanted them to speed it up, but at the same time, if they had sped it up, I think we would have missed out on some of the like world building and character building that we did get. So I'm not actually wanting them to speed it up, but I'm also like, just give me more. But I really, really did enjoy this episode, and I don't entirely know what to expect. So as I always say, and if you have watched this far into my review, thank you, hello. If there are things about the world building, the lore, the different societies that I just don't know, that are just extra information, if you know more about the lore, please tell me, because I always love to know that. If it's something like, oh, in the next episode you're going to find out the guy in the comet is Bob, I'll find out next episode that the guy in the comet is Bob. But if there are things like that I should know, please tell me. And also, are we supposed to get the Undying Lands and everything? Because I was initially, when I was remember watching the first movie and we saw like the elves going through the forest and they were like, oh, they're going to the Undying Lands. I was like, they're just gonna all just go and die. But then like going to heaven. But then in this, they used to live there and then they passed to Middle Earth and now they live on Middle Earth, and now special ones get to go back, and then obviously ultimately they all go back and the time of men has come, at the spoiler alert, at the end of Lord of the Rings. So is it like another civilization? Is it sort of symbolizing a heaven? Why would you choose to go to heaven when you're in the fullness of life? I don't know. So if I am misunderstanding that, so if you do understand it, please let me know. Or if the show itself is going to give a good explanation of it at some point, that is also fine, but I don't know that it will, because it is something that was mentioned in the movies and then obviously takes place here. And Galadriel made a very big decision. What are the ripple effects going to be from that? So this was a very promising first episode, definitely one that I feel like didn't quite hit the mark, just because I think it had so much ground to cover and it didn't have enough time to really spend getting enough detail into these characters for me to fully feel grounded in the world, in this particular story of the world. But it was definitely enough to whet my appetite and to make me intrigued with where it's going next. A reminder that you can find the unedited version of this reaction on my Patreon 2 weeks in advance, the edited version 1 week in advance, and thank you so much for watching.